What I'm about to tell you could completely change the way we look at the FNAF timeline forever. All of the major events, the Bind of 83, the MCI, the DCI, could take place at different Freddy's locations than we ever thought. And it all comes down to many overlooked small details, one of which being this TV. This whole theory kind of started with one of my last videos that I did on Dream Theory, specifically the time when Scott Cawthon was talking directly with game theory and giving us hints and clues. One of those pointing directly to the little tiny toy figures of the toy animatronics that the girl has at the playground. Now I know this has been talked about by others, but why is it there is a reference to the toy animatronics way back in 1983 at a Fredbear's Family Diner? Those animatronics shouldn't even exist yet if we understand the timeline this way. So that's when I decided to set out to try to give an answer to this question. But let's first diagnose what we believe we are seeing in the FNAF 4 minigames currently. Right now, we believe that the environment in which we explore during the FNAF 4 minigames take place in 1983. In these minigames, we play as the crying child, William Afton's son, counting down the days until his dreaded party because he hates and cannot stand animatronics of the nearby pizzeria. We also find out that his older brother, Michael, or Foxy Bro, keeps bullying him, which then ends up, taking full effect in the Bite of 83. But that's not the only thing we learn. We also learn that the crying child has had some sort of history there, and that's why he's so traumatized of these characters. He's seen something in the shadows. He's heard rumors from other people about dying and being hid somewhere in the pizzeria. And I believe for a fact these minigames have not 100% been solved because there's so much convoluted evidence here. Currently, we believe that in 1983, the pizzeria that the crying child goes to is Fredbear's Family Diner, simply because the only two animatronics that we see in the diner are Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. That should only make sense, right, for it to be Fredbear's Family Diner. There are so many inconsistencies with it being Fredbear's that I don't even think it logically can be. The first thing that I want to just say is it's never been 100% confirmed that this is Fredbear's by Scott or anyone. It's still just a theory up for debate. Second of all, why is it there is a TV show in 1983 that has the classics involved? Why is it that there are plushies for these animatronics? Why is it there are party masks for the classics? How come there are legitimate toys of the toy animatronics in 1983? This is not adding up for me whatsoever for this to be Fredbear's Family Diner. It's almost like we're looking for a location that not only has Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, but possibly versions of the classics and the toys. Oh my gosh, the FNAF 2 movie. In the opening sequence of the FNAF 2 movie, a very strange date appears on the screen, 1982. And it's very clear that this is the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, not the franchise location. And lo and behold, on the logo of this establishment are the toy animatronics. Now, in the opening sequence, we don't actually see the toy animatronics or the classics, but there's plenty of artwork throughout the building, particularly on the floor, and also the plushies that are being sold of both the toys and the classics to suggest that they existed in 1982. But this is the exciting part. Who else is in this scene at this Freddy's location? Spring Bonnie himself, and presumably Fredbear somewhere else in the pizzeria. That's right, when I noticed this, I started going absolutely crazy. This is literally exactly what I was looking for. There was even one little detail that I noticed that it's possibly a bit of an Easter egg. You see, in the FNAF 4 minigames at the pizzeria, there are groups of balloons on each one of the party tables. And in the FNAF 2 movie, there are literally groups of balloons in the exact same colors as the ones in the FNAF 2 minigame. It's almost like Scott is just handing us everything on a big platter and saying, here you go, you just gotta figure it out now. Even the two swinging doors that Bonnie lures a kid into the back room in the movie looks a bit like the big swinging doors that the crying child sees William Afton helping put someone on in a costume. It looks like almost kind of the same layout. So at this point, you probably know what I'm saying. The pizzeria in the FNAF 4 minigames is not Fredbear's. It is a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the original. And I believe that there is evidence also from Secret of the Mimic to prove this. Throughout the gameplay of Secret of the Mimic, it is made abundantly clear that Fredbear's Family Diner is a real place. There are pizza boxes scattered around the location and multiple posters and other references saying that this place is open for business and is currently running in 1979. Now, 1979 and 1983 are like 4 years apart, and a lot can happen in the FNAF timeline in 4 years. So to say that Fredbear's Family Diner has not changed at all from 79 to 83 is a bit of a stretch in my opinion, especially for a growing franchise. I think it's also worth noting that in the basement of MCM, Edwin Murray was already working on the prototype for Freddy's, something that, William Afton and Henry Emily already had in the back of their head. They were already working on the classic animatronics back in 1979. In fact, in the gameplay of Secret of the Mimic, we learn that William Afton actually buys out the MCM facility and has access to the entire property, which means later on he ends up using it for Fazbear Entertainment purposes. But one key factor of the FNAF 4 minigames is the fact that the Crying Child's house is very close by, within walking distance of this pizzeria. Now, I think that this is a very important detail and one to help us solve this mystery, because we are looking for a pizzeria location that is very close by to William Afton's house. And the only location that we see in-game that matches this description is the MCM facility along with Edwin Murray's old manor. Now, it's already been theorized multiple times at this point that Edwin Murray's manor actually eventually becomes William Afton's home, specifically because of the tunnels and bunkers underneath the house that eventually become sister location. And this honestly helped us answer that big question. How was William Afton able to create a bunker under his home without anyone noticing? Well, the answer is it was already there, and he bought out the land and decided to use it. I think there's hints all throughout the game for this fact, especially in one of the end sequences in David's bedroom. The bedroom looks eerily similar to the Crying Child's bedroom. And so I believe William Afton bought out the MCM facility, repurposed everything for his whatever he wanted to do. But that wasn't all. The MCM main factory was then destroyed, and they built the very first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location sometime in the early 80s. And this lines up perfectly with the FNAF timeline and how everything works. In 1979, we are there as a Fazbear employee, and Fazbear Entertainment is still working on the prototypes of their new animatronics. Throughout the gameplay, we see references everywhere of Fredbear's Family Diner being open in 1979. Everything with the Mimic takes place, and William Afton buys out the MCM facility, and Edwin Murray mysteriously disappears. Now that Fazbear Entertainment has a brand new plot of land, they decide to build the very first Freddy's location, and William Afton decides to move into Edwin Murray's old home within walking distance of the Freddy's Pizzeria. And this, my friends, is where the base of operation begins. And I don't think we realize 100% how big this first pizzeria was. According to the FNAF 4 minigames, we see references of the toy animatronics from the girl in the playground, as well as Mangle in Elizabeth's bedroom. Also, we see the plushies of the classics in the TV show of the classics, which also shows Fredbear, by the way, in the show. And then we obviously see Spring Bonnie and Fredbear on stage. And here's one key factor that I noticed to show that there were multiple animatronics at this pizzeria. In one of the minigames, you can unlock a special Easter egg where if you go back with the Crying Child, you will see William Afton helping someone put on a Spring Bonnie costume. And in that frame, you can see both Spring Bonnie and Fredbear. But if you keep walking, you can see the shadows of another rabbit animatronic, as well as another bear animatronic. So we know 100% for sure that there are 4 animatronics at this location. I just believe as part of their marketing, they had Fredbear at the forefront, which would make sense for a new company. This leads me into another discussion, one that I would love to hear your thoughts on. Because is it just me, or has anyone else noticed the correlation between the FNAF 2 phone phone calls and the FNAF 4 minigames. Now, many of you are probably wondering, what the heck am I talking about? FNAF 2 takes place in 1987, and you're right, the gameplay of FNAF 2 takes place in 1987. That doesn't mean that the phone calls take place in 1987. And we already know that. One of the biggest, questions that a lot of people ask about FNAF 2 is, why is it in the phone call, Phone Guy references that we are working during the summer when our check is dated November 11th in the fall?
Hello, and welcome to your new summer job at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
This disconnect for me made me sit back and take a closer look at the FNAF 2 phone calls. And what I'm possibly theorizing, it's not 100% set in ground yet, but what I'm theorizing is that those phone calls are actually from 1983 during the week of the crying child's birthday. I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but let's just look at the comparisons with me. First of all, Phone Guy says that it's during the summer, and in the FNAF 4 minigames, it very much looks like it is summertime outside. The next thing he says is that this is our new job at the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It implies that we might have heard of the old location and that it had been set and left to rot for a long time, but states clearly that Fazbear Entertainment is committed to safety, trying to distance the gap between Fazbear Entertainment and this old restaurant. Now, possibly what he's talking about is the spring lock failures that have taken place at Fredbear's Family Diner. And I believe we know this from Secret of the Mimic, where we hear Edwin Murray getting frustrated about having to make the version 2 of the spring lock suits. It simply says that they can continue using, young people as they have, in the past, implying the fact that there has been some very unsafe things happening, which then could possibly give Fredbear's Family Diner a bad name. And so Phone Guy here is making it distinct that Fazbear Entertainment is different and set apart, therefore implying that this is the new and improved Freddy's location. He then goes on to talk about how the new animatronics are way better and not as scary as the original animatronics. And if you keep going forward in the phone calls, there are so many things that correlate with the FNAF 4 minigames that it kind of makes sense. All the way to where he talks about there being a birthday party the next day and that we will be on day shift. That birthday party he's referring to, I believe, is the crying child's birthday party. Now, I know there are problems with this theory, the main problem being that Phone Guy distinctly talks about the withered animatronics. And if these are new animatronics at this location, why are they withered and why do they smell bad and why are they possibly haunted? Well, that's a good question, and here's the best answer I can give. In 1979, in the basement of MCM, we see Edwin Murray working on the prototypes of the Endo 01 versions of the classics. Now, what does that tell you? That means that the versions using the Endo 02 endoskeletons have already been created and are possibly already in use. This takes us to the FNAF 2 movie, where we find out, surprisingly, that the Endo 02s are actually spring lock suits. So therefore, Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, the original classics, as well as the toy animatronics all use Endo 02s because the Endo 01s are still in the works. And those eventually get used using parts of the Wizards after the first Freddy's location closes down. And so that would mean that the original versions of the classics existed before or at 1979. The implications of that is crazy. Now, this answer brings up another question. Did the unwithered variants of the Wizards first appear in a Freddy's location or Fredbear's? According to Phone Guy, he makes it very clear that those are the older models that are in the back room, they are withered and they smell bad, and that they were taken from the previous location to be used as parts. Well, on night one's phone call, he clearly said that the past location was set and left to rot for a while. And so it would make sense for the unwithered variants to look more withered, and especially if they're taking them apart and using them for the toy animatronics. And so if we're saying that the first appearance of the classics was in Fredbear's Family Diner, Fredbear's shuts down for a couple years, then Fazbear Entertainment takes them to this first Freddy's location in 1983 and is using them for parts, I think that kind of honestly makes sense. But here's also something else to get you thinking. In the actual gameplay of FNAF 2, there is one key thing missing that gets mentioned from Phone Guy that we don't see in the game. Phone Guy talks about a yellow spare suit from the back room being used to do something bad. But throughout the entire gameplay, we don't see anything being used. But if we say this phone call was recorded back in 1983, this would make sense. I literally just talked about how with the Easter egg, you can see that there are multiple of the Spring Bonnie and Fredbear animatronic suits. A spare was used from the back room. And so overall, while I'm not saying that this is the perfect answer to everything, I do think that it brings up a lot of questions that we can have fun with and try to answer. So please don't get me wrong, I do not believe that this is 100% a correct theory. I know there are flaws here. But that's the fun thing about the FNAF community. We always want something to talk about. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What if the FNAF 4 Minigame Pizzeria is the first Freddy's location? And what if the FNAF 2 phone calls take place during the week of the FNAF 4 minigames? And what if the original versions of the classics using the Endo 02s were made either in 1979 or before, because we see the Endo 01s prototypes being built in 1979. Please help me out in the comments down below, and we will keep making videos on this because I think this is very important. Please subscribe, and I will see you next time. Hope you all have a fantastic day.